Hello there, one and all, and welcome to a special, exclusive, premium live event. This is the Captain Swiss live stream for the 10th anniversary of my 21st birthday. Yes, that's right. I've been 21 for a whole decade now, and don't I look great? I think so. Haven't aged a day. Oh, I had I had Cameron with me right before we went live, and then the second I hit go live, suddenly, oh no, it looks like he's back. Hello? Hello, have you returned?
Hello? I don't know what happened. I just said, "Oh, you went backstage," and that's it. I assume you went
Yeah,
live.
the second I hit the live button, it sort of pushed you backstage and you disappeared for a second. But you're back now anyway. Um, yes, I was just telling the dear viewers that this is the tenth anniversary of me turning 21. I've now been 21 for a full decade. It's pretty good.
It is, yeah. It's strange, isn't it? Being immortal vampire.
They used to call me the Peter Pan of Stoke-on-Trent. It's true. John Cooper is in the chat and says, "Happy birthday, Swiss." Psychomens TV is here as well and says, "Happy birthday, Swiss." Thank you very much, guys. So before we went live, Cameron was telling me how at work, someone climbed over the fence at the back of work and had been rummaging around in the bins recently. And you described it as, and I loved the choice of phrase you used where you described that there's nothing viable in the bins. That tickled me for some reason. They used the word viable there.
But there isn't.
You said there's like discarded sandwiches.
That's
Like
it's basically it. That's what you're going to find in there.
I don't know then.
It's not the first time though. Utterly bizarre.
Maybe it's Rachel Reeves having a little rummage if there's any ways to grow the economy in your bins. You never know. It could be. There we go. That wasn't long for me to try and awkwardly segue into politics, was it? What are we saying in the chat here? Dr. Richmond also in bed says, "Swiss, I have written to the Queen about giving you a knighthood." Ooh. John Cooper says, "Would join but in a D&D session. No problem, John." Psycho Ben says, "The real question is when is Skinhead Swiss coming back?" You know what? It's funny you say that because at work they were starting to comment that my hair was getting quite long. Not in like a horrible way when I say they started to comment, but yeah, they're oh, so yeah. I nearly said Swiss. They don't call me Swiss at work. Yeah, they said it started to get long, and they were like, "Oh, normally you cut it off by now." And that got me thinking. So then the other day, I gave myself just a little trim with some scissors and cut it a little bit. But yeah, what does sometimes happen is I'll get fed up of having long hair, and I'll just go, "Fuck it," and shave it all off, and then just hide it under a hat for a while. But the problem is, right, the older I've got, the scarier it is to look in the mirror and see myself with no hair. Skinhead Swiss was I could deal with that in my early 20s. In my early 30s, I would look downright middle-aged with a complete skinhead. Don't want it.
Gold is beautiful.
John, well, thank you. I mean, I'd like to think I'll be beautiful regardless. John Cooper says, "What are the thoughts on half of Gen Z want a dictator to rule us?" Oh, that's a good question. All right, then let me just read the rest of these quickly. Frank says, "Happy birthday, thank you, Frank." Shockwave says, "Happy birthday, thank you, Shockwave." And A says, "Happy birthday, thank you, NA." And Frank says, "Is Chaos in the Storm Bunker the name of a song by the Smiths?" Yeah, okay. So there was that widely shared poll that apparently said that about half of Gen Z wanted a strongman dictator who wasn't shackled by the chains of democracy in order to rule us, and that was put about quite a lot. But I think my first instinct to seeing that, honestly, was to think that that doesn't gel with what I expect to be the case. I wonder if it's the case of one of those polls where, depending on the question or the prompting or other things, whether that might have had something to do with the result coming as it did, because it seems awfully it just doesn't gel with reality as I understand it. The idea that half of the youngest adults think we should be a dictatorship. It doesn't seem right.
There's been a couple of polls like that. The one I saw was like 1 in 5.
1 in 5 seems more accurate. Yeah.
1 in 5 men below the age of 40 would not oppose a strong leader that does away with democracy.
I mean, you know the political compass quiz. I've not done one of those. Oh, I could do a political compass quiz for the birthday stream today. That could be fun. But in that they've got a lot of questions about your opinions on certain statements, and it'll be how much do you agree or disagree. I'm not necessarily saying this is the same as the poll, but tangentially related. And in the political compass quiz, it would ask you questions like, what one of the advantages of a authoritarian system is not having Parliament get in the way of making decisions quickly, or something like that. And although I am absolutely in no way a proponent of a dictatorship-style country, as far as that particular statement goes, I go, well, I suppose so. I suppose if you were to try and weigh it up and go, okay, what are the advantages and disadvantages of living in a authoritarian dystopia? I guess decisions get made a bit quicker because Parliament doesn't have to vote on them. It doesn't mean that I weigh that as being important enough to want one. But when you're answering that question, the way that the question's framed, I'd go, oh yeah, okay, I suppose so. Yeah, I guess that's an advantage.
Does that, and I think there is a lot of young people that are very disenfranchised with the political setup at the moment. And the state of the British economy. The country's in a state. I don't blame someone that's thinking, "Oh, democracy is not getting us anywhere."
Well, I think that is the trouble in a way that you know, when you look at things like well, this is the thing. I'm thinking in particular terms to the United Kingdom and our problems, but actually you're seeing similar trends in a lot of sort of Western world countries these days. So as much as we can identify certain things to do with the UK as being why people feel this way, also it seems to be a more general thing. But I think it's kind of something like that the economic system that we've been in for the past few decades just does not seem to be delivering that improvement of quality of life for people. You know, that old idea that, you know, the generation after you would be richer than you and would have a better quality of life, and it was an ever climbing ladder towards a degree of sort of progress and being better off and all that sort of thing. And then that seems to have either reversed or stagnated in recent decades. And the problem seems to be that no matter who you vote in, that problem just doesn't seem to be getting solved. So I guess from that point of view, in the mindset of some people, they'll go, well, look, you know, it isn't working when I pick party A, it isn't working when I pick party B. Maybe the whole, you know, maybe the whole system's just fucked. Maybe that's the reason that that nothing's working out, because that the entire system as it exists is broken. But I think that's a real sort of throwing the baby out with the bathwater kind of analysis for it. At the very least, in the sense of saying no meaningful changes could still be achieved within a democratic system where we continue with, you know, the rule of law and all those other things. To say no, the only way is just to, you know, scrap it and go for some maverick strongman, you know.
Well, it's a question to ask you then. Do you feel passionate about any political leader at the moment?
Do I feel passionate?
Yeah,
about any political
party? Like you can vote saying, "Oh, this party will fix most of the country's problems."
No, no. Admittedly, no. I would say that I would say that if I was able to do sort of like a little shopping list of policies and ideas, I think that spread across 3 or 4 of the parties out there is probably enough things that if I could put them all together as one coherent vision, I'd say, okay, I think that sounds like the right set of ideas. But no one seems to be offering it as a particular package at the moment.
But I do think, and with a lot of people, I think a lot of people are just political homeless, and I think that would probably drive that position.
Yeah.
If we had like the last 30 years of Conservative government, and the Conservatives have basically failed to govern the country effectively, and now we've got a new government where nothing or very little is changing, wouldn't that radicalise some people? I mean, look at reform.
I mean, I very much think that Reform and Farage right now are offering. I mean, in a sense, I'm oversimplifying it. I'm not saying these are one-for-one comparisons, but I think there are enough similarities to say that I think, in a way, Reform and Farage are offering for the right now what sort of Jeremy Corbyn's Labour was offering the left back in the 2010s, which seems to be a more authentic feeling change and departure from the norms of what you get in the two main parties. Because absolutely no doubt about it, Corbyn came along with a significantly different agenda to what had came before him. He brought the party quite a bit to the left, and you could see solid differences between the sorts of things he was proposing and what the middle of the Overton window was at the time. And I guess with Reform, you have a similar kind of thing. If you're a voter that highly values things like lowering immigration, for example, and you maybe previously you voted Tory, and God knows that immigration's only gone up under the Tories in the past 10-15 years, then again that Reform probably exists as a very sort of ooh, I bet they mean business when they say it, because Farage has hardly banged on about anything else apart from immigration for the last 15 years,
I think there's a bit more to it though, because reform also pointing from like Labour voters, like former Corbynites. Those I read it a couple of months ago. I read an article that said talk about Corbynites like switching from like Labour to Reform.
I mean, I do think those people do exist. I think that they are absolutely probably a relatively thin slice of the.
I imagine they are,
so,
but I think imagine that there's this group of people that jump on a populist train.
And
that's a big part of Reform's appeal.
Oh no, yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that my political views have somewhat moderated over the past 10 years. I think I'm probably closer to sort of the centre now than I was before, but there's absolutely still an appeal to me in populist politics still. It's still very there. It appeals to a sort of a base instinct almost of kind of just going, oh, fuck it, I'm sick of the disappointment and the failure of the same old faces in the political parties. I want to either try something new, or I want to punish them because they deserve it. And that's the feeling, that's the instinct that leads you to voting for those kinds of people. I think
that's a giant force of politics across the West at the moment.
Yeah. So hang on, because this is a really interesting conversation, but I want to catch up on a few comments quickly, and then we'll continue on with it. Oh my goodness, there's all right. There's a lot of these guys. I'm gonna skim through them a little bit. I can sort of believe it. A lot of Gen Z men seem to be taken in by the Andrew Tate types. What do you think of the poll with Reform? 29%. Tories fall to 5th in the Commons. Oh, is that Is that a new poll? Does that come out today or something?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me put a pin in that shockwave. I'll check that out before we finish today. John Cooper felt like a boomer. I apologize, guys. I'm skipping through these to try and catch up to the front. Yes, I do have ads on this. Are you getting lots? I apologize. I do click a little box that says how many ads do you want? Do you want a conservative amount or do you want a large amount? And I pick conservative. It's the only time I tick the box for conservative, boys and girls. Frank says if you do a political compass test, Swiss, then Josh in Bullet would be extremely pleased. Happy birthday, Swiss, says Apollo. Happy birthday, says Drew. Thank you. Apollo says reform would get more Labour voters and Corbynites if they spoke about taxing big business and social housing. I do think that reform would absolutely. I mean, because I think they've said stuff along the lines of was it British Steel or something like that? That you like the state intervening to save British Steel, so we'd still have that being manufactured at home.
Reform also wants to look at state intervention in utilities.
And this is the thing. Sorry, just quickly, this is a real sort of golden area because there are certain things like that. There are certain nationalisation type ventures that are pretty much universally popular across the left and right these days. And I think you're seriously missing a trick if you're not backing them. You know, I mean, Christ, even Starmer's pretty tame agenda is renationalising the rails, aren't they?
Yeah, but reform do talk about social housing, but the context of immigration.
Well, I saw their press conference the other day with Farage and who's the chairman of Reform, the new one. I've forgotten his name, youngish guy.
I forgot. I can picture his face, but I can't.
Yeah, you know the guy I'm on about. Like they replaced
new stuff, something like that.
Yeah, I'm feeling that kind of something like that. But anyway, it was them guys, and they were getting questions from the audience. And one of the things they were asked in the run-up to the local elections is, you know, what is your platform going to be? Are you going to be NIMBYs? Are you going to be YIMBYs? You know, what are you going to be playing differently to certain areas, like the Lib Dems or whatever? And Farage, this is the thing. Farage is an awful lot better at saying very little but making it sound like he's saying a lot, compared to someone like Starmer, who will say very little and it sounds like he's saying very little. Like Farage sort of went, well, look, you know, the thing that the main parties, no one in the main parties wants to acknowledge is immigration. And the fact that, you know, the very high levels of immigration and all the people coming in mean that even if you were to meet these house building targets, you'd still be having more people coming in over the rest of the parliament than the total amount of houses that you've got to build. Now, on one hand, that's spot on. And it's sort of like talking in a sense about the elephant in the room that other parties really aren't tackling head on. And it's an incredibly fair point to make, to say that the sort of unprecedentedly high levels of immigration right now mean that whatever efforts you make towards providing more housing or public services or whatever else, if you're continuing to stretch it over an ever increasing population when we're already thinly spread, so to speak, then you're still going to continue to have problems. However, on the substance of when they sort of said, so, you know, what exactly would you be doing about building these houses and all the rest of it? As far as detail goes, all you got was, you know, of course we'd build more. The social housing stock was depleted, but no, that doesn't mean building on the green belt. And actually, after having listened to that response to the question, I went, well, hang on a minute. Besides him mentioning immigration, nothing else that he said was any more specific or detailed or different from what any of the other parties are saying. They all say there need to be more houses. They all say we don't want to build it on the most natural, beautiful countryside sites, but sometimes we're going to have to force it to happen in certain places. You know, I think what I was trying to say is that, like, I saw him being quizzed about that, and the answer sounded a lot more direct and authentic than others. But then when I kind of stepped back and I thought, okay, but what's he actually said? It was nothing more than anyone else other than pointing out that immigration needs to be lower, which I agree with on that part at least.
Yeah, I don't think housing will ever reforms focus.
No, pardon me. Let me do a few more of these comments real quick. Where was I up to? You'll have a laugh at what Elon Musk has exposed out of US aid. Elon, it's my birthday. Don't you bring Elon Musk to my front door on my birthday, Drew. Happy birthday, Mr. Swiss, says Claire. Little John UK says, do you think there'll be a lot more close reform versus Labour contests in the next few years, particularly at local council levels? Yeah, I would imagine. I would imagine so.
I say this for certainty. There's definitely going to be in the local elections this year.
Big time. Because we've got locals coming up now. Obviously, Labour's doing reforms to unitary authorities, the way that local government is structured. So some of the places that are going to be parts of these changes were able to decide, basically, do they want to take part in these locals or do they want to delay them until a point further down the line. And I think 9 areas in total have said, no, we don't want to do that at the moment. I think most or all of them are Tory ran. But then again, this batch of locals that's coming up is in areas that were very good for the Tories last time around anyway. So most of them would be Tories. But of course, sort of reform I've noticed has kind of framed that as saying, well, look, only dictators cancel democracy. This is the uni party clubbing together because they're afraid of us. And I mean, I think there's an element of truth to that. I think certainly if you are, a Tory-ran council and you look at where you are now versus where you were in 2021 under Boris, and you say to yourself, okay, we could have our locals now and probably get slaughtered by reform, or we could hold off a year or two until these new unitary authorities come in, and maybe by then we will have improved our showing a little bit better. So I certainly think there's I can absolutely understand a bit of self-interest and self-preservation in that decision making, but I do disagree with the characterization of it as being only dictators cancel elections, because I think, well, I mean, but are they cancelled or are they delayed? You can agree or disagree with them being delayed. And it's a perfectly coherent argument to say they shouldn't be delayed because it could still be a few years yet before these new local authorities come into place. So it's only right to refresh the mandate of the people running the councils. Fair dues. But I completely reject the characterization of it being compared to some dictatorship or something, What else?
Yeah.
Sorry. Go on, Cam. Did you want to say something there?
Stop more. I was saying I don't blame anyone for criticizing that, because there's actually no need to delay the elections.
I think I think that I would have a much more fun time covering these locals if we did have the full slate of them, because it would be a much more explosive set of results, probably. I mean, yeah, I suppose, like, if I was going to have local elections coming up in my area where I live now, and then I find out that the council's decided to delay them, I'd probably be a bit peeved as well. Yeah. I can understand that. I see why people would be annoyed about it and be against it. But I don't quite agree with the language of saying, like, it's a fundamental affront to democracy akin to what dictators would do. I think that's overblowing it just a little bit. We have a super chat here from Random Quotes, who says Biden was never going to be Bernie. Captain Swiss. Do we need to update this for 2025, Cameron? Because this has been a mainstay for the last 5 years now, but both Biden and Bernie are yesterday's men. What would the new quote about US politics be?
I have to think of one.
Trump term 2 was never going to be Trump term 1. Captain Swiss. Jalo Punk says Zia Yusuf being the Reform chairman, I think. Yeah, that sounds about right. Average Joe says Reform and SDP are increasingly bedfellows. Reform taking some policies from the SDP. I mean, yeah, the SDP are kind of, they're socially conservative, but economically sort of like, they're traditional sort of left. You use the state kind of on economics. They when people sort of talk about, oh, if only there existed out there sort of like something that was a bit more socially or culturally right wing, but still with some slightly left wing economic policies. That's I think the SDP sits within that discussion. I think in some elections past, I probably would have voted for the SDP if they'd existed in my area, but they're just not a particularly big party that seems to stand everywhere.
They had an electoral pact at last election.
Yeah, but I seem to have a very high bench. Well, I don't know. I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not awfully convinced that I've got a consistent theme that runs through the way that I vote these days. I seem to be a little bit all over the place. I still feel that probably the SDP would still be a bit too socially conservative for my liking. I still am probably overall a person that would describe themselves as being somewhat progressive or on the left. It's just that I began to feel a distance between myself and some of what I'd term as being the more extreme positions that the progressive left took in the last 10 years or so. The stuff that has latterly come to be labelled as woke. Although the problem is that woke is one of those words that people apply to pretty much anything they don't like. So it's not a very valuable descriptor of saying what I do and don't like, more so, I guess you could call it identity politics, that kind of thing. What else have we got? Was Biden even in control?
No, he wasn't capable of being in control.
Hey there, what'd you say? Listen here, Jack. I'm in control of the whole way. You can't deny it, man. I need to work on my Biden. It's
I don't think Kamala Harris was that influential either, because I don't think Biden actually liked her.
No, I don't think they got on particularly well, from what I understand. I think in retrospect, I think Harris would have done a lot better in the presidential campaign if she had shat on Biden's legacy just a little bit. I mean, myriad factors why ultimately Trump won and she didn't. But one thing that was pointed out to me is she was like interviewed on TV at one point and said so, and she was asked something like, "What would you do differently in the past 4 years if you'd been in charge, or what would you change?" And she said words to the effect of, "I wouldn't really change anything." And I think that when a fair amount of the American populace, well, you're seeing this all across the West, people don't like the incumbents, they want change, they're trying to vote for something different. That seems like total kryptonite to the idea of getting elected to say, no, I wouldn't do anything differently to what we did recently. It's like the Tories at the moment. The Tories are trying to reset themselves and figure out how to orient themselves between this Labour government and Reform and opposition now, and they are having to do a certain amount of dismantling their own legacy of government, because they were voted out of office because that many people were sick of them and thought they hadn't really done any good. So now any prospective new leader, such as Kemi Badenoch or whoever else, needs to sort of shit on their own record and say, yeah, we made loads of mistakes. We let everybody down. It was terrible, awful. We'll do much better next time. And then, of course, the problem is that quite a number of the people doing those messages are the ones who were in when that happened the first time around anyway. So maybe in that sense, I don't know, maybe it wouldn't have helped Kamala Harris too much because they still would have gone, well, you were still vice president. It probably wouldn't have hurt to at least say you do a few things differently, though. There is Lee Hallam says there is a birthday poll for you, Swiss. Thank you. You know what? That was alluded to earlier by Shockwave. So I am going to check that out because apparently it's quite explosive. So we will be looking at that before we go. Josh T says, is it even true that we have too much immigration? We have a declining birth rate, so we need more young workers. I think that you can look at it in different ways. You can look at you're absolutely right to say that with an aging population and a declining birth rate, in order to maintain a significant chunk of the population of working age that can pay into the pot, so to speak, then if people aren't having more children, then you do need immigration to fill the gap there. That's true. Additionally, though, you also look at things like housing stock and the current quality of public services and infrastructure and whether that suits the number of people we have in the country right now. And if that is already overly stretched, then bringing in even more people into the country than you already have been, that's going to be a detriment in that kind of an area. So I'm not, I wouldn't frame it as being as simple as saying immigration is entirely a good thing or entirely a bad thing. And I think the ultimate solution is something like bringing it down somewhat from the levels it's at now, but still having a net, what's the word I'm looking for? Net surplus, but still having more people coming into the country than leaving it. You still need the population growing via immigration, but you also need a focus on trying to address some of these other issues as far as services and housing go as well.
I think the big issue is the strain on our natural resource and infrastructure at the moment. The levels of immigration have been unprecedented. So, but yeah, I think there should be a better balance.
Yeah.
If it's still, we're always going to need some. There's always going to be some level of immigration. But I think it has to be much more sustainable. The levels.
Yeah. So I think I can absolutely accept and agree with the argument that you need immigration and you need population growth via immigration in order to tackle things like certain jobs not being filled or the aging population. However, when you're also experiencing strains on the existing infrastructure, be that housing, public services, or the rest of it, then having a large influx of immigration on top of that is also going to cause its own additional problems. So long term, you're always going to need population growth via immigration. But certainly, I think that the very high levels of immigration we're seeing at the moment, especially in the last year or two, that is that seems like I think we were sort of like for most of the 2010s or so, we were net sort of it was numbered in sort of the low 100,000s, right? Sort of 100,000, 200,000, 300,000, that kind of a ballpark. And then last year it was like much closer on that scale towards 1 million than it was down at the bottom. That seems like just clearly too much. You know?
But there's been a pattern where a lot of Western countries, after COVID-19, where immigration is really shot up. I mean, if you look at Canada, Australia, in particular, even the United States, it has been a bit of a trend. It's not just in Britain where we've seen unprecedented numbers.
I'm gonna do a few more comments here. Let me see. Psychobenz says, I think the point is that a lot of problems in this country are downstream from immigration, and until you solve it, then nothing will actually be fixed. Josh T says immigration fixes more problems than it makes. Apollo says my vote is currently with Reform, but no votes in Stockport in 2025 because councils it is in thirds and it's the year off. Lee Hallam says 5.5 million voters will now not be voting. It's not dictatorship, but these councils have no legitimacy after their term ends. What would you say if Parliament elections were delayed for boundary changes? I mean, that is a fair point. That's a fair point. Certainly, if it was parliamentary elections, if Keir Starmer said, we need to review the boundaries, we need to change the 650 seats to 600 and something else, and that's going to take a little while to come in, so I guess I'm going to be in charge for an extra year or two. Yes, I would absolutely agree that would seriously not be on. Now, whether or not you want to map whether you want to say it's the same comparison between the government running the whole country and a local authority, I'm not convinced it's exactly the same. I'd be more concerned for the state of the health of democracy in this country if it was the little government of the whole country trying to delay elections rather than just local elections because of reforms. But yeah, I don't disagree with that. I would quite happily see all of these elections going ahead in all of these areas right now, even though one of the arguments is, well, is it not a waste of public money to be electing people for what's going to ultimately be a much shorter term if it's all going to get, reformed into a new authority soon anyway. Because as I've already said, if I lived in an area with a cancelled election, I'd be not very happy. But no, my main point on that one was the way that Farage was framing it. It is typically, outrageous kind of, this is the biggest betrayal since the last biggest betrayal. This is the biggest betrayal we've had in a month, says Farage. Apart from the Chagos betrayal and the Brexit betrayal and the immigration betrayal and the woke betrayal. But this is the biggest betrayal since all of those other betrayals, says Farage. But we're a positive party. We've got a positive vision. But we're always so bloody angry about everything as well. Election maps and stats for lefties has done seat projections on that. I don't think I can ignore this poll any longer because this is
it's absolutely insane, that poll.
This is calling to me. This poll.
I've seen it and it's
okay. Hang on then. Let me get my let me bring it up. I'm assuming Election Maps UK has posted it. We love Election Maps UK here on this channel. Okay. Let's screen share this now so we can get essentially a live reaction to it. What is this poll? So this is okay. So this is Find Out Now. So this is the pollster that had already been putting Reform above the others. They were the first pollster that was giving Reform a clear lead, and then obviously it was quite a moment when YouGov recently put Reform out on top as well. So now the newest Find Out Now poll to come has Reform on 29%. Reform on 29%. My goodness. I mean, you know what, right? I mean, you've seen the things that I've said in Bullet to Everybody. You may have seen some of the other streams I've done on this channel. It will come as no surprise that I've been saying for the past 2 getting on for 3 months now, I think we're on the way to Farage and Downing Street. I think that Reform are going to, be topping the polls, and they'll probably end up hitting 30% or so at some point this year, or that kind of thing. But this is happening so much quicker than I'd anticipated. I didn't think Reform would be polling approaching 30% until probably around about the time of the local elections. This has accelerated a lot quicker than I'd expected. So Reform 29%, Labour 25%, Tories on 18%. Ooh, yeesh.
I mean, who's voted Tory at this point?
I don't. People who have habitually voted Tory all of their lives and won't change that view. People maybe who were Tories but also voted Remain rather than Leave, maybe. Whatever rump of One Nation Conservatives still exists to support the Tories. That's about the best I can give it, really. I don't know who else is voting. Evidently not that many. If you compare it to, say, I don't know, was it 2019 general election? Boris Johnson got like 40-something% of the vote. It was definitely in the 40s, wasn't it?
Yeah, I wonder, are we like in the 1920s? Like we see it where we saw an enormous political shift.
Yeah, yes, I believe we are. I do believe we are. And I can't.
The Conservatives or the next Liberal Party.
I mean, it's looking that way at the moment, isn't it? It's hard to say what's ultimately going to win out from this, because you could see a scenario where Reform just totally replace the Tories, or maybe you end up with some kind of a takeover or a pact or a merger down the line. I know at the moment, obviously, Farage and Badenoch are both saying we don't want to work with the others. There's no way that we will. We want to win the election ourselves. But obviously, this far out from the next general election, it's in neither of their interests to even hint at the idea they'd work together, because they're still in that fight right now for dominance on the right of British politics. It's only going to be once you get towards the next election and the writing is truly on the wall, okay, this is the way that it's clearly going, this party is doing much better than that party, that's when the discussions will have to start. All right, then, if we want to get Labour out of office, we'll have to work together. But right now, they're still playing the game of who can win on the right. My goodness, yeah. So that is quite a poll there. Tories on 18, Lib Dems 13, Greens 10, SNP 3. Wow. I'll do a few more of these comments here. And they says, what about those hairy legs? Oh, was this when I was talking about Biden earlier on? what was that? Biden gave a lot of interesting little speeches, didn't he? Can I smell your hair? Lee Hallam says, I respect the SDP, but they are politically irrelevant, really, aren't they? Yeah, pretty much. I mean, they don't have any MPs. I think they've only got a very small handful of councillors. They rarely... I don't think they've ever really approached even 1% in the opinion polls. It's possible they might have done once or twice, but I've not seen it. No, they don't exist as a significant force in politics at the moment. Psychoben says, honestly, the SDP are most in tune with the British public. They're just completely unknown to most. Jarlo Punk says, Reform didn't stand in my area last year because the SDP stood. What else have we got here? John Cooper says, would you do an online Dungeons and Dragons stream, Swiss? Yeah, I would. I mean, I'd obviously have to do some planning for it and figure out who was going to be on it. I've not done D&D type stuff since I was in university, so quite a while back now. But that sort of stuff's always appealed to me. I've always thought it'd be quite fun to be a dungeon master for people. I want to see Nigel Farage hold a mass deportation press conference at the end of a runway as PM as a deportation flight takes off in 2029. this is what Donald Trump has done to the world, Cameron. Donald Trump comes in, and now suddenly this is yeah. Why not have that? You know,
it's so bizarre. But yeah, I don't think that's Forge's style. I don't think we would do something like that.
No, he's got his own. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I think there's a case to be made where you could call Farage the British Trump, but it's not. Nobody else. No one is Donald Trump apart from Donald Trump. You're looking at what fits that particular niche within politics within its own respective country, and the character of British people and British politics is obviously different to the character of American people and American politics. So it's a different type of person and messaging and policies that you would get filling those similar niches. What else have we got? Oh my goodness, we've got so many comments here at the moment, Cam. Christ, right. Apologies, guys, if I'm skipping over your comments. I'm just trying to catch up with everything right now. In the next 20 years or so, we're going to have robotics and AI remove the need for unskilled immigration almost entirely. People who are still pro-immigration are like the southern US states, completely behind the times, trying to hold on to slavery as the economic system instead of embracing technology. Lee Hallam says, I recall that Liz Truss's low point was 19%, wasn't it? That sounds about right. Yeah, I think they were just skimming the high teens in the nadir of Liz Truss. Apollo says Boris got 43.5, Sunak got 23.5, Blair got 43 and 97, Brown got 29. Thank you, Apollo. John says, to be honest, without Nigel Farage. Without Farage, I think reform collapses. Well, yeah, because I mean, I don't know entirely about collapses per se, but certainly I think there would be a significant drop for them. Because as much as reform was sort of rising a little bit in the run-up to the general election, it was Farage returning that put booster rockets on that. It's a bit like, I suppose, again, going back to that comparison, if we're talking about Donald Trump, I don't think the MAGA movement would have quite the same force to it and popularity to it if Trump suddenly disappeared. And in the same way, I don't think reform would have quite the same effect if Farage was gone either. I do think that some of these rely on these particular characters to push it forwards.
There's a lot of people on the British right who want to get rid of Farage.
Well, you know what? They better fucking hurry up. Their window is closing, Cam. They better hurry up and come up with a plan.
I'm saying there's a little bit of a movement to get Rupert Lowe to replace Farage for the last couple of months.
Yeah, from what I've heard, I mean, it's not exactly a massive pool of talent when you're looking at who could replace Farage when they've got 5 MPs. But yeah, I think Rupert Lowe's probably the one who would. Because I think a lot of people who are keen on reform are quite keen on Rupert Lowe, aren't they?
Yeah. Elon Musk is.
Oh, well, you know, Elon Musk is keen on all kinds of things, Cameron. You know what? I was rewatching Doctor Strangelove recently, and where Peter Sellers comes along as Doctor Strangelove, and he's got the glove on, and he's trying to suppress his hand doing the Nazi salute. Internally in my mind, I was going, "Oh, look, he's giving his love to the room. His heart goes out to them. It's a Roman salute." I chuckled to myself when I was watching that. Lee, Mein Führer, I can walk. Lee Hallam says there's a danger that there is a tipping point for the Tories where they collapse to reform. Well, yeah, I mean, you know, the Tories and reform have been largely evenly split for the last little while, although reform clearly seems to be leading the Tories now. Do you get to a point where reform are clearly 10 points ahead of the Tories or more, And then that conversation, like I say, at the moment, it's still a battle between the parties on the right to say who is going to be the best challenger to Labour come the next election. Even when it becomes evident that the answer to that is not the Tories, then probably you're going to get a lot of the people still voting for the Tories now who are more naturally aligned to the Tories than Farage or Reform. Potentially, you're going to get more of them holding their nose and saying, well, I didn't really want it to be Reform. I would rather it be the Tories, but I'd still rather Reform than Labour. So then you do start getting more of them drifting over it, like a bit of a snowball effect. Yeah. What else have we got here? I think Reform will also have problems if the media pays attention to any scandals during the election, John Swiss, says John Cooper. Well, don't you worry, John Cooper, because Reform have got the strictest vetting process in the whole of Europe now. Okay. Their vetting is matched by nobody. They've been let down by the vetting in the past for whatever reason. Sometimes people with very racist views seem to be attracted to Nigel Farage. I couldn't possibly imagine why, but that's done now. They've got an excellent vetting system, so I'm sure there will not be any skeletons in the closet of future Reform candidates. So don't you worry about that one, John. They've solved the problem. There will be no more problems with the vetting from this point forwards, I'm sure.
He's Reform Teflon.
Largely, yeah, largely. I mean, the thing is, any time a candidate for Reform or Reform member or whatever else comes along and says or does something incredibly objectionable, Farage would just say, "Well, look, I don't know him. I don't want him in the party. He's gone now. Blah 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 blah. Done. Move on. New. So yeah, it is that way, isn't it? It just they bounce off. Josh T says, will Reform U-turn on PR if they can do well on first past the post? Because that's their only good policy. Interesting question, Josh. I don't know for sure. I don't think I can predict that far into the future how things will end up. All I can say is historically, those that have been in favour of first past the post have been the ones that have benefited from it because they are already one of the two established main parties. Everybody else wants a form of PR because first past the post doesn't benefit you if you're a smaller party. If, hypothetically, Reform comes along and does replace the Tories as one of the two main parties, then they will be sitting in the position of first past the post benefiting them compared to how things were before. And then at that point, the incentive to switch from first past the post to PR lessens if you're Farage and Reform, because suddenly you stand to lose a lot more than you stand to gain. That said, I can't say one way or the other whether they would or wouldn't. I genuinely don't know. And A says you should do a stream sitting in a shed while it's raining, smoking a cigar, and staring contemplatively at a cardboard cutout of Starmer as the I love this as the camera slowly zooms out. That sounds like absolute cinema, NA. Oh, you know what? Okay. We'll see. Maybe not. I've never been a fan of cigars personally. I've tried them, but I've never really enjoyed them that much. I prefer a tasty cigarette compared to a cigar. But I'm making a mental note, NA. I'm making a mental note. Okay. Oh, look, it's Kevin Logan. I was expecting the live studio audience to go, hey! Kevin Logan says, people who are keen on Reform are keen on inbreeding. But that's not quite true, Kevin, because from what I understand, we did have calls in Parliament recently for cousin marriage, but I think Reform were somewhat opposed to that. I think it was the newly elected independents that were happier on that one, perhaps. I've been checking out some of your streams, by the way, though, Kevin. I don't always comment in them, but I've had recently with some of the Trump Musk stuff that you've been covering. I have been popping in and lurking from time to time. John Cooper says, "What's your favorite Marvel film, Swiss?" Maybe Guardians of the Galaxy. Maybe Avengers: Infinity War. Maybe the original Avengers. Probably one of those. Bubblewist says, "Happy birthday, Captain. How old are you now?" It's the 10th anniversary of me turning 21. So I'm 21, and I have been for 10 years. And he says a lot of Reform voters, like Trump supporters, they either don't believe anything negative about Farage or don't care. Yeah, I'd say that that's probably accurate. Have I seen the Fantastic Four and Jurassic World trailers? No, I haven't. Would you say the Lib Dems are the best bet to replace Labour on the left, Swiss? I don't know. I mean, when you say the best bet, I guess they are in the best position if Labour were to be replaced because they are the party with the most support and the largest number of MPs other than Labour that sit overall on the left of the political spectrum. So in that sense, I would agree that they are probably the best place to replace them. However, at the moment, I don't think Labour are being replaced as in their position as one of the two main parties. I think that probably it's going to continue for some time at least to be Labour versus whoever ultimately wins out of Reform versus the Tories. Shockwave says your jaw will drop if you look at the projections of that poll released today. Shall we have a look at that one as well, Cam?
It's absolutely bizarre.
All right then, let's have a little look. Hang on, bear with me. Have we got we've got right from Election Maps UK again here. Just one poll, so that's the Find Out Now one, and those Reform Conservative numbers are somewhat outliers as things stand, but this is what it could look like in an election. Reform, 253 seats. That's 73 short of the majority. Labour, just shy of 200. Liberal Democrats, 77. SNP, 45. Conservatives, 40. Oh. I see. I remember that Shockwave had said in the chat, Tories in 5th.
New Liberal Party.
That's remarkable. That really is, because at that point with the Tories, assuming polls are correct and blah blah blah, at that point with them dropping off into the teens in terms of support, they then start to encounter that problem faced by a lot of the third parties, which is their support is too thinly spread in order to achieve the many MPs. And then suddenly parties such as the Liberal Democrats that are probably on a lower vote share overall, but the Lib Dems are obviously much better at condensing their support in particular areas, then you'll see the it's a bit like we had at the most recent election. Reform got more votes than the Lib Dems, but the Lib Dems got vastly more seats than Reform. And that was because of the difference of where their support was spread out. If the Tories fall this far from where they are now, they will start to suffer that same problem. My goodness, yeah, that is
who'd actually form a government if that actually happened?
I mean, in this scenario,
Reform the Dem.
Reform. Can you imagine? Literally, all the Lib Dem voters going, "I can't believe I've fallen for it again. I can't believe after 15 years since the coalition, we've fallen for it again."
But
the Lib Dems.
But you know what?
Prop up Reform.
But what if they do that though on a temporary basis for PR? The team
I-
up
I-
to
I- I-
PR.
I would burst a fucking blood vessel. Honestly, I the fuck me. The most recent general election is the first one since 2010 where I had lifted my self-imposed embargo on ever voting Liberal Democrat because for a long time I was punishing them over either tuition fees or their position on Brexit. And I felt that we were time enough removed from those things that I was willing to say, okay, I will vote Lib Dem in certain contexts if I feel that that's what I want to do. if they went into coalition with Reform, now I don't expect they would. I don't. This is total hypothetical pie in the sky, but fuck me, that was hilarious.
But
Oh dear.
do you think it's possible that they could come under some sort of? I mean, Farage proposed it like a proportion of a PR alliance.
Well, the thing is, obviously, they are, they are aligned on the issue of PR, but are they aligned on anything else?
No.
I feel that the Lib Dems and Reform are totally antithetical to each other. They disagree so profoundly, in their views on other things. But I think the gulf between the Liberal Democrats and Reform is so much wider than the difference between the Lib Dems and Cameron's Tories a decade and a half ago. I really would struggle to see them working together, even if they both did support PR. I'll do a few more comments here. Oh my god, lots to catch up on. Where was I here? We've got another happy birthday. We have Lib Dems are not different enough to Labour to replace them. If they were going to be replaced, it would be a union-backed party. A bit like how Labour replaced the Liberals 100 years ago. That's a very messy parliament for forming a government. In that scenario, says NA, it would probably be a Reform Conservative minority government or a re-election. Yeah. I would probably agree with that based on that particular poll. That's the one that makes the most sense. Reform Conservative minority government, and probably that ends up falling and a new election is called fairly soon. Podge says Reform with Lib Dem confidence and supply with a guarantee of PR. I just struggle to see how much confidence the Lib Dems would be supplying to Reform. When their policy for, I don't know, mass fucking deportations gets unveiled and Ed Davey has to go, well, we got PR. so off you go. Apollo says, bold prediction, Tories getting less than 15 seats at the next GE. Good chance it's 0 seats, unironically. Wowzers. And Podge adds that they would be aligned on PR and NIMBYism. What else would the Lib Dems and Reform be aligned on? If we're going to follow this thought experiment out, what would it be?
Is it the orange book Lib Dems or the yellow book Lib Dems?
I don't know. I mean, the thing is, they would be so. They're total opposites on like Europe, though, aren't they? The Lib Dems ultimately want to rejoin the EU, and at the moment they're not going as far as saying that, but they are saying at the very least, let's join the customs union. Reform instinctively want to be as far away from the EU as possible and would like to be much, much, much closer to Donald Trump. Total opposites. So I'd really struggle to see them working together. Lee Hallam says, what if all they got was AV? Oh, can you imagine? All this time passes, and once again, the closest we get to scrapping first half post is another fucking AV referendum. I mean, I'd vote for it. Sure, I'd go for AV. I like the idea of being able to go vote in elections, and I can go, all right then. I'll rank my choices. What's my first choice? What's my second choice? Sure, I'd I'd vote in favour of it, but I think they should have the AV referendum as an AV referendum as well, though. You rank your choices of saying, do you want AV? Do you not want AV? Are you not sure? Should we have another vote in 5 years' time? Wait and see. NA says Lib Dems and Reform are both pro-unionism and against Scottish independence. All right, then. That's another one. Fair dues, NA. We're slowly clubbing together the Lib Dem Reform Manifesto, aren't we? What have they got together at the moment? Proportional representation, probable NIMBYism, British unionism. Is that enough to keep a government together? I'm not convinced, but we're getting there. Any more, dear viewers? What else have the Lib Dems and Reform got in common? Shockwave says, "Imagine the Tories." Is that the sound of you furiously typing to bring up a Lib Dem manifesto to find out what they'd both be backing? Oh, and Sky Echo is here and says, "Happy birthday, Swiss." Thank you very much, Sky. And by the way, guys, if any others of you in the chat have wished me a happy birthday and I've not read it out and I've missed it, thank you very much, because there's an awful lot of comments going by. And our newly found Russian friend in the chat who popped up in the most recent stream has blamed the Jews. Shock.
For what?
Just in general, you know. Yeah.
Thank you, Kanye.
Jollo Punk says, we're only 6 months on from the election. Labour will slide further once net zero and the power cuts start to hit. Wait till Reform hit 35%. I'm not convinced we're running into power cuts anytime soon, to be honest with you. You know, I'll sit here with egg on my face happily if that does end up being the case. I do admit when I've been wrong from time to time, but I don't think we're running towards widespread power cuts just at the moment. Apollo says, to be fair, the Lib Dems denied the Brexit referendum and Trump denied the 2020 election result. So both are election deniers. Well, yeah, that works, I suppose, Apollo. Yes. Reform love Trump. That is one that Farage never really gets asked about, is it? When Farage goes, "Oh, I love Donald Trump. We want to do all the things Donald Trump does. Donald Trump's fantastic." No one ever says to him, "What about when Trump, denied the election and led his supporters and far right paramilitary types to storm the Capitol building?" And Farage goes, "Well, I don't agree with everything my friends do, but that's sometimes we don't agree when you try to overturn democracy." 3-day week. Welcome back, Ted Heath. Oh, and our Russian friend says, "I work for the Kremlin, Dugin, and of course the Kabbalist masters. Multipolar third world is coming to you." Do you remember the good old days when the Russians in the chat used to give me super chats of rubles rather than
I remember that.
what we get now? Those were the days when I was on Putin's good list. Back when I was a useful idiot for the Russians. Where's my super chats, you Russian bot?
Russia's on a sanction, so you can't get them. Can't get those Russian rubles anymore.
Sadly, not. It's not the best. It's not the best exchange.
No.
Curious, what presents did you get, Swiss? I got. What did I get? I got some socks. I got a Primark gift card. I got a couple of video games. I got some energy drinks. Classic Swiss type presents. My God, is it 8:30 already? Shit.
Yeah, it's gone quicker.
Oh my god, yeah. Before I started streaming, I'd said to Cameron, I was probably only going to stream for about 30 or 40 minutes, and you've ended up getting double, essentially, dear viewers. And in typical fashion as well, I was going to do this was just going to be a gentle kind of off-topic stream. We were going to have some fun. I thought we'd be talking about all kinds of things. Instead, it ended up being pretty much entirely politics once again. But what are you going to expect, boys and girls?
We could take off politics. You could. What do you think of Kanye West?
What's he done now?
Have you seen his wife?
I am not. I do not keep myself abreast of Kanye West goings on. What's happening with him then?
Basically, his wife got kicked out of the Grammys because basically Kanye got this weird transparent dress to put on his wife. So his wife walks into the Grammys naked, looked naked, but she weren't. So he got kicked out. So that's the drama of on social media.
I'm struggling to muster a thought or an opinion about that, Cameron. Oh dear. Oh.
Girl, what video games did he get?
I got a couple of PlayStation 2 games. I got SmackDown versus Raw 2006. And I got what was the other one? Where is it? Is it on here somewhere? Hang on. Oh, I'll tell you what else I got. I got some art supplies as well. I got some acrylic paints and some little canvas boards, which was quite nice. Where's the other stuff that I got? Is there any? I'll have to. I don't know. I'll dig it out at some point and show you. Evidence. Old Corbynite Swiss was a Russian asset. Old Corbynite Swiss was a useful idiot for the Russians. And I'm not saying that was because I was a Corbynite per se. I think that just those particular views overlapped for me at the time. But yeah, no, there was an awful lot of bullshit that I used to believe, which I later came to reassess. Not least in part when the Russians fucking invaded Ukraine. And he says, "I love that you got PS2 games. I love old games. Yeah." Claire says, "A Swiss playing those modern games," and Podge says, "More paintings soon." Right. I'll tell you what. There's one more thing I'll share with you before I go, guys. Bear with me. Oh, Cameron, keep the people happy.
So. Swiss, right.
Hello.
Have you ever played the best game for the PS2?
Spider-Man 2, Sit and Run. No?
They're good. But the best game for PS2 is obviously Area 51 for the PS2.
No, I never played that.
You've not played it?
I never played it, no. Would you recommend? Have you played it?
Oh, it's fun. It's fun. I got a spare copy, but yeah, it's.
I made a. Can you hear that lovely sound? This is like a little plate. It's got little holes drilled in it, so I think it's supposed to be like you could put it on a wall or next to a front door or in a garden or something like that. There's a place near where I live where you can go and paint and decorate like crockery and other stuff, and they put it in a blast furnace for you. So I went along with a few members of my family and we all did something a little while ago. And I thought I'd make something that at some point I could give away to one of the dear Captain Swiss viewers. So I don't know if you can read that.
Yeah, I can just see it.
It says, "Captain Swiss made this just for me." and then my signature, and then in the corner it says batch number 11. That's the joke, that it was actually mass produced. Ha ha ha. Yeah, so maybe some point I'll find a reason to give that away to somebody. Lol Swiss, you should go back on AA's show. He is based insane, ironic, whilst what are you? I don't know, a fairly boring social democrat. No. I wouldn't go back on AA's channel again. It's not something I'm entirely sure that I'm happy that I did back then either. But I think it was in the wake of the 2020 American election. I think I don't know. I think AA was always questionably very right wing, but I feel like he sort of jumped into headfirst into a very deep rabbit hole. And he became a person that I just didn't want to be associated with anymore. I'm still on fairly good terms with the Britisher though. Actually, he's someone who's quite firmly on the right of politics that I get on with pretty good. I think probably because even though he's from what I've gathered, he's very socially conservative, but he at least meets that threshold of doesn't seem to be supporting forces that are antithetical to democracy, which is always a bonus, in my opinion, at the very least. If we can agree on that basic concept, then there's room for discussion,
So what do you like? Go or debate people who greatly disagree with you? Like say the British, would you debate someone on the far left?
So sorry, say that again.
So saying, would you debate someone on the far left, like go on like a really far left channel? Instead of the right.
Well, actually, I think it was maybe a couple of years ago. Someone on Twitter had asked me if I would come debate them on their channel or something like that. And then I had a little look over their channel, and they were basically like a Stalinist, revisionist apologist type person. That a lot of their content seems to be framed around all these terrible lies that people were telling about Russia under Joseph Stalin. And at that point, I thought to myself, I think not. I think I need to erect. I think I need to erect my own fire. You know what? It in part got me thinking about that sort of stuff. It was when I ran to be an MP, and I thought to myself, if I get quizzed about some of the people that I've gone and spoken to on YouTube, how would I feel about justifying some of those choices that I've made? And I think I came to the conclusion that I probably couldn't justify some of them. Therefore, it was a good idea to change what my approach was.
Well, did you know the Kulaks burnt the grain and caused Holodomor, not Stalin?
I'm not getting into a discussion about Joseph Stalin today, Cameron. Apollo says AA is a big anti-Israel bloke person now. Britisher and AA fell out, I think. Yeah, I think Britisher and AA fell out round about the same time that I separated myself from that group as well. But yeah, the thing is, if it was left alone to me, I don't exactly bring up the academic agent on this channel an awful lot. It's only ever me responding to people mentioning him in the comments, which I then respond to myself. I'm quite happy to exist in a totally the internet's a big fucking place. I'm quite happy for us to exist in totally separate parts of it, NA says, lol, you've got a low bar, Swiss. Does that apply to your dating life? How dare you, NA? Apollo says the Rest is History's recent episode on Roman emperors is good. Swiss Rest is History is a great podcast. I'm vaguely aware of the Rest of History. I think that one of the hosts of that was had some quite interesting things to say in the run up to the US election. I think that they'd sort of predicted the Trump victory, whereas like the Rest is Politics people hadn't. I've maybe I can't remember the guy's name, but I've seen a couple bits of him. But that's about that. NA says, "Lol, sorry, I meant no offense." If anything, NA, it was the fact that I could not think of a good witty comeback to that. That's what blew me away. That normally I'm able to throw something back and go, well, blah, 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 blah. That one I thought, shit, there's not, I can't even think of a good joke to apply to that one. Lee Hallam says, Diane Abbott, Mao did a lot of good things. Well, we're gonna have to have a word with Andrew Neil then, because him and Abbott used to do that politics show on the BBC. Can't be sharing a platform with that Diane Abbott now, can we? I came across an English pro-North Korean government channel many years ago. Interesting.
They do exist. There is a very niche group of British communists that dedicate themselves to Juche. It is an actual thing. There are people out there that advocate for North Korean style socialism.
They're not getting invited on the channel either, Cameron.
No,
I'll tell you that.
I mean,
tell you that much.
If you're ever bored and want to do research on niche British far left groups, it is fascinating. But if you want to do that,
I mean, it would, it would be fascinating. My voice broke there. It would be fascinating in its own way, just to try and interrogate what mental gymnastics are involved to be advocating a North Korean style system in the UK, and to believe that would genuinely be a good thing. But I think at some point I'd hit a wall of frustration of just going, I know that I'm right, and I know that you're wrong, pretty much objectively. But whether or not I could rhetorically break through the wall of fucking propaganda you seem to believe in, thinking North Korea would be a good model to base our system on, I wouldn't want to bother trying.
How many Zoomers want a dictator to rule Britain?
Who? Sorry.
So how many Zoomers want a dictator to rule Britain?
Can we stop? Can we just say no? It's like drugs. Just say no. I'm not even gonna explain it. I'm not gonna be here and say, here's my 5-point plan of why we should not have a communist or fascist dictatorship. I'm just gonna say no and move on. Turn the page, as Keir Starmer would say. Oh, Cameron, I'll mention this. I'm never going to end the bloody stream at this point. This stuff with Keir Starmer and the voice coach. Have you heard about that?
I have, yes.
I've been trying to assess what to think of it, because it seems a little. On the one hand, it seems a little bit foggy, the interpretation of the rules of going traveling and meeting back when the lockdowns are in, but you could do it for work purposes. And on the one hand, Starmer says that he had a team to prepare for this speech, and the voice coach was part of that person preparing him for the speech. That sounds like a reasonable justification, in my opinion. But then I've also heard that apparently that the voice coach had traveled between lockdown tier areas in order to go see Starmer. which does seem like a breach of the rules, but more so a breach of the rules on the part of the voice coach rather than Starmer. So I don't think that this is of a quite comparable level to Partygate, but at the very least, it seems to me that this is a bit like not following the spirit of the rules at the very least. And given that Starmer made so much hay when he was opposing the Tories and their lockdown breaches, I do think that there's a very bad whiff of hypocrisy to this. I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on it and whether you think it's going to end up having cut through with the public or not. Because at the moment,
I'm not convinced that it'll cut through the public. I think there's a group of other scandals that the Labour government's doing that's going to cut through the public. It will end up the same way as when Keir Starmer was pictured having like a beer in lockdown.
Yeah, because they back when it was Beer Korma, they were calling him. And that was because the police had investigated that one and they'd said that they didn't think that it met the threshold, but then at the same time people were saying, oh, but you know, if Boris and Sunak can have a birthday cake together, Labour people together having drinks and food after a campaigning event. But on that one, I was willing to outsource that to the opinion of the police investigating it, whether they thought it breached the rules or not.
Yeah, and did the police say they're not going to take any action against Starmer?
Well, they said that yes, but it wasn't necessarily due to whether or not they thought it met a threshold of being worthy of investigation. It was because it was more than 3 years ago. So they've said that they're not investigating it because it was an old happening, you know.
Yeah, I mean,
but I think the problem is though that you know, Starmer set himself up as being Mr. Rules. You know, Starmer is very much Mr. Rules. That's what his friends in government call. Well, I say friends. That's what the people he's in government with call him, Mr. Rules. And he obviously made a lot about the breaches of lockdown rules with the Tory, rightly so, mind you, rightly so, with Boris Johnson, Partygate, and all the rest of it. And then since he's come into government, say for example, you know, you had the freebies scandal, and there was nothing within the freebies scandal that violated, from what I'm aware, like the ministerial code or a conflict of interest or things like that. But optically, it looked very, very bad. The fact that he'd become prime minister and suddenly he was getting all this free shit, especially against the backdrop of, say, cancelling winter fuel payments for people. And I think that was damaging to him because he couldn't seem to see past his own, well, I know I'm operating within the rules, so anyone who thinks that I'm not is wrong. You need more of a fucking finger on the pulse there of the way people are going to perceive that kind of shit. And I think this is probably just going to only go further to damage that particular view, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I really don't care about it because it's so many years ago, and I really don't care about people breaking lockdown rules in 2025.
I think maybe, I don't know. Maybe I'd feel more torn over it if, like, I thought Starmer was doing a good job as prime minister at the moment. You know, maybe if I was really firmly on Team Starmer and I was like, oh yeah, they've got in and they're doing all these fantastic things I wanted them to do. Oh no, they're going to be brought down by the voice coach thing. But at this point, I just don't care. Starmer just disappoints me in myriad new ways every month. I didn't even vote for Labour in the last general election. So what are the fucking chances of me voting for them in the next one, you know?
I do think, how long is Starmer gonna last? It can't last long. He's resigning with reform, taking over Labour from the polls. How long can he last?
I don't know. I don't know.
Let's be honest. The election wasn't convincing. If you
Not
look at the
no,
votes that Labour actually got, they got less votes than what Common got in 2019 in total,
yeah, yeah.
and you got a majority.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely a quirk of the first past the post system, because they sure they were the largest party in terms of support, but having only a third of the voting public supporting you, and it being quite a low turnout as well, for that matter, that's really not a strong mandate. So as we're quite clearly seeing, I think that Labour are in serious fucking trouble, to be honest with you. I mean, like I said, I've been saying this for the past 3 months now, that I think that Reform and Farage are going to end up in number 10 if we follow on the same trajectory that we already are, which is Labour are unpopular and ultimately ineffective in government. Kemi Badenoch is unable to revive the fortunes of the Tories. If those two things continue, then it makes absolute perfect sense that Reform comes along and fills that gap. And thus far, nothing that Labour's really saying or doing seems to be diverting me from that view. Now, yes, there's still 4 years left on the clock. Things could change, but it's certainly not looking good for them at the moment. What else have we got here? Podge says, any thoughts on the cancelled local elections? We touched on that one earlier on in the stream. But in a nutshell, I think that I don't think that they should have been cancelled, but I don't agree with the characterization of it as being akin to some democracy cancelling dictatorship either. Lee Hallam says it's old news, but people want to think the worst of him now. Michael Howard got a lower percentage of the vote in 2005 than Starmer got in 2024. Oh, Jesus. Oh. Is this stream still going on? It's been an hour and 30 minutes, yeah. And says, Claire, don't deny us a good time. Yeah, this is typical Swiss fashion, isn't it? Says he'll end the stream and doesn't. Maybe I should. Didn't even do that political compass test. Maybe one day in the future. That's an idea for some nice soft content to provide for the dear viewers. Cameron, have you got any final thoughts that you wish to share before we wrap everything up for today? And by the way, thank you, dear viewers. That 20 viewers watching at the moment is a pretty good number. That's probably higher than most of the streams that I've done recently. So it's been very nice to have so many of you sticking with us for today's stream.
I'll say we're living very bizarre times when it comes to politics. So anything that's unexpected, expect it.
Yeah. I mean, fuck me. I wouldn't have fucking anticipated Donald Trump saying, "Let's take over Gaza and resettle the fucking Gazans."
Well, that's not new. That's been discussed for quite a while.
It feels new to me. It wasn't on my radar until now.
But there's been discussion about resettling people of Gaza in Sinai, and a few other places for a very long time.
But I will say that's a fucking can of worms I'm not opening right before the end of the stream, because I want to go.
We barely touched on America. What Trump's saying and doing.
The problem is there's enough fucking stuff coming from Trump in America that I could be streaming on it every day, and I really don't want to because I'm fucking done with it, man. I'm talking about it when I have to, but it's too much. What have they described it as? Flooding the field or something like that? Sort of like all the executive orders push everything out. There's so much stuff going on
Well,
that you
Trump,
literally can't even react to it.
Trump's business instinct is in real estate. So what's proposed is like a real estate investor's dream in Gaza. We're
Well,
building hotels, casinos, mass housing projects.
so, well, I'm sure once they clear out all the rubble and Palestinians, then those land value prices will go through the roof.
But there's been discussions of what for years what Gaza could have been without Hamas, and a lot of people propose that Gaza could be some sort of metropolis, a bit like Dubai. People have said that and made that argument that if you want for groups like Hamas, they could have had money to develop to be like Dubai, because of the natural gas off the coast.
I think the trouble is that you have Hamas in. Well, the problem is that there's an ongoing cycle kind of between Hamas and Israel. So I don't want to say either like a chicken egg kind of thing. I don't want to say because of or in response to or whatever. But I feel that Hamas's grasp on Palestine probably also has something to do with the way that the state of Israel has treated the Palestinians. But then again, because of the Hamas terrorism towards Israel, the Israelis are only going to treat the people in Gaza worse because they don't care how many fucking civilians they bomb and kill in order to defeat Hamas. But then again, you've got Hamas pulling shit like what they did where they went and killed a bunch of innocent Israeli people and took a load of hostages. And naturally, you expect that Israel's going to respond to that. And it just goes on and fucking on. I think a Gaza or a Palestine without Hamas is absolutely what you ultimately want for them. But at the same time, I struggle to see how they can de-extremify their leadership for as long as the approach towards them by Israel is what it presently is also. And I obviously don't have a good immediate answer for that. But that said, that doesn't mean that I'm naturally gravitating towards the idea of kicking all of the Palestinians out of Gaza and turning it into fucking Las Vegas either.
But all right, I'm gonna propose devil's advocate a little bit here.
Go on.
Gaza's mainly rubble. A large portion of the people that live there are now refugees and homeless.
Mm-hmm.
Is it feasible to keep them there in very poor conditions?
Right. The thing is, Cameron, why is it in rubble?
We all know why, because of the war that's gone on there.
Because Israel's bombed the shit out of it, right?
Yeah.
Now, it could be a very easy, logical leap to go, you know what? If we destroy all of their fucking houses so they don't have anywhere to live, and then we say, oh, these poor Palestinians, they don't have anywhere to live. I guess we'll have to move them all out of Gaza to somewhere else because that's the humanitarian thing to do for them. Then effectively you've managed to kind of go, oh, okay, then we'll bomb the shit out of them and kill a load of them and level all their houses, and then we have a good justification for removing all of them from the immediate vicinity anyway. But that doesn't feel right to me.
The question is, I don't think it's necessarily right, but the situation is that majority population of refugees are homeless. So that's a very difficult situation, and a large proportion of them are children. The population of Gaza is extremely young. It's got a extreme population. So, whatever has happened in the past, what is the best way forward? And I don't know. I don't know the answer. So,
I mean, the
mean-
the problem is, I would say something like a two-state solution, but I'm beginning to feel that saying that feels like a bit of a mealy-mouthed non-idea in a way,
but
because it sounds.
what are the two states? People say two-state solution, but what are the two states?
Well, in theory, you'd have an Israel and you'd have a Palestine, wouldn't you?
What is the Palestine?
Gaza and the West Bank.
But how feasible is that?
Well, presently it's not very feasible because you've got Hamas in charge of Palestine, and then you've also got Israel trying to defeat Hamas, and Hamas doing terrorist attacks on Israel, and in turn Israel bombing the shit out of basically any Palestinians they feel like.
Hamas is not in charge of Palestine. They're in charge of Gaza.
They're in charge. Sorry, my mistake. They're in charge of Gaza, but not the West Bank.
Barely. And you have the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank, which is the recognised authority for Palestine.
I mean, I'd like to think that maybe the problem is, I think that the world as it exists at the moment is so not the world anymore for turning to the UN to help decide things, because it seems like everyone's fucking turning their backs on that kind of shit. But in theory, you'd want, if you're going to say set up a two-state solution of sorts, you'd have to I think for the time being, you'd probably have to get as many fucking UN peacekeeping troops in there as humanly possible to just try and make it impossible for the two sides to resume killing one another. But I don't have an easy solution to this. I mean, fuck me. There's people who've spent their entire lives and careers trying to solve this problem, and clearly it's a problem that hasn't been solved. I just feel that it sits incredibly wrongly with me, the idea of deporting all of the Gazans after you've bombed shit out of where they live.
No, it's probably isn't, but the humanitarian crisis is so bad that I just don't know. But the flip flopping, where it's going to be temporary or permanent.
Well, yeah. I mean, I've seen both versions of statements. I think the White House had said something like, "Oh no, it'd just be temporary," and they'd allowed back. But then in Donald Trump's public statements, from what I've seen, it suggests it would be permanent. I struggle to imagine the Gazans leaving and then the whole place being redeveloped into whatever the fuck it is Donald Trump wants to do, and then suddenly he goes, "Okay, then," and they're all going to come back. That seems pretty unfeasible to me.
I mean, who's going to work in the casinos?
Native Americans. I mean, NA here says it's ethnic cleansing to deport them after what's happened, plain and simple. Yeah, I see where you're coming from with your devil's advocacy, kind of going, oh, you know, they're where they live has been absolutely fucking destroyed. What quality of life can they have where they presently are? But again, it seems like, okay, but the idea of deporting all of them to somewhere else, and keep in mind, I don't think any of the neighbouring countries have necessarily suggested that they want to suddenly take a massive influx of people from Gaza
whatsoever.
But to suddenly deport all of them sounds like essentially you've kind of realised the end goal of what the most extreme wing of Israeli politics has been after for a long time, which is the removal of the Palestinians. By the way, I'm certainly not saying that of all Israelis or necessarily mainstream Israeli thought. I don't have an awfully good read on that, but certainly I think some of the coalition partners that Benjamin Netanyahu's got, who exists probably like within sort of like the Israeli far right, certainly probably their end goal has always been to remove the Palestinians from the area, I'd imagine.
Yeah, there is some groups that advocate for that, but it's probably the hardest geopolitical questions you can look at.
Mm. So yeah, if I guess if I was going to try and offer, if I'm going to criticize what's going on, offer something as an alternative, then I think for the time being, I'd say have like an unprecedented level of UN peacekeeping forces in there. Get a real international effort in there to rebuild Gaza, to try and maintain a peace between Israel and Gaza, and then ultimately try and move towards some kind of a negotiated settlement between them having their own states. You'd have I mean it's not a perfect solution because obviously the West Bank and Gaza aren't linked to each other, but then again you do have examples within other countries where parts of the country aren't necessarily accessible via land. It's not an unknown thing.
Who governs Gaza?
I think you'd. I think for the time being, probably you'd get the people in charge of the West Bank in charge of Gaza.
That's been tried and tested. The Palestinian Authority is not very popular in Gaza. I don't know how they go.
Well, I think with a slightly heavy hand, you'd have to say to them, "Look, Gaza, unless you allow the UN to come in here and run the fucking show, as opposed to Hamas, then you're going to end up getting an unholy alliance of the United States and Israel forcibly deporting all of you to another country, and you will never be allowed back. So probably take the lesser evil and have the United Nations in there instead of the United States."
What's the big difference between having the UN instead of the United States going Gaza?
Well, because
when if the UN comes Gaza, it's basically going to be almost anything that goes in Gaza is going to be dictated by the United States anyway.
Well, I think the clearest difference I can point to at first is to say that if the United Nations were in there, that would be with a view for the Palestinians to remain in Gaza, and if the United States were running it, clearly as Donald Trump has indicated, it's with a view to remove them all from Gaza. So that is probably the clearest difference I could point to.
Possibly.
Apollo TD says the British should run Gaza. Yeah, come back and fucking mop up our mess that we created. I don't know. Apollo says Swiss for Nobel Peace Prize. Look. Obviously, dear viewers, I'm attempting to try and put some ideas out here because I think it's fair enough that if I'm going to criticize the current state of things and oppose what Donald Trump's suggesting, I should at least try and put forth some ideas of my own. But at the same time, I am fully aware of what a complicated situation that is. And there may well be a number of reasons why things that I've suggested are not particularly feasible either. But at the very least, I'm attempting to suggest some things, so I'm not just sniping on the sidelines complaining. Cameron, why haven't I ended the stream yet? Because I was about to go, and then we got pulled into the fucking Israel-Palestine conflict, which is like the ultimate fucking bog for not ending the stream. I think it's time for me to go. Right, where was I? Dear viewers, thank you very much for wishing me happy birthday, and thank you for all of your comments as well. And he says, "Oh, don't go Swiss. I'm afraid it's time. I'm afraid it's time." But you know, we've made some progress today. We've solved the Middle East. Happy days. All right then. Oh, by the way, guys, I'm probably going to have some more AI slop for you soon. There's a particular website that I've been using that I've been making some stuff on recently, and at the moment I'm holding fire. I'm not just putting stuff out there right now. I'm trying to build up a little collection of some things that I could weave into maybe a nice video. So I guess to look forward to soon. You might have some more AI slop. I might do that political compass test as well that I said I was going to do, because it's been quite a few years since I've done the political compass test, and I expect I'll probably end up somewhere relatively towards the center in the green square, because that's pretty much where I always end up in those tests. But hey ho, we might as well do it again just to find out. Right, thank you for all your comments, Blue Guy. Thank you for turning 6. Congrats for turning 16. Happy birthday. Here's to many more. Middle East completed it, mate. Wonderful. So there we are. On Captain Swiss's 31st birthday, he solved the Israel-Palestine conflict, and he received a £2 super chat from Random Quotes. Today was a good day. Cameron, thank you very much for joining me for the stream today. And I can now tell you that we are in the second month of the year. And right now, you and Tom Williams are the only eligible guests for Stream Guest of the Year, because I've only had 2 people on so far. So you have a 50% chance of winning it in theory. So best of luck.
Flip of a coin.
Indeed. All right then, guys. Thank you very much. Catch you all later on. Ta-ta.